What is up, guys? It's Eligid back with a new video. Today we are going to be looking at something that is on the topic of mechanical keyboards, but we are going to be discussing mechanical key switches and the difference between these 9 cherry switches. Let's get into it. As many of you may know, Cherry is a very popular brand within the mechanical keyboard community. Cherry is a German key switch manufacturer who makes all different types of key switches for keyboards, and they have been in business for a very long period of time. So today we are going to be taking a look at these 9 different switches. So our top row is going to be consisting of tactile switches, our middle row is going to be linear, and our bottom row is going to be clicky. So let's start with tactile. Our first switch we are going to be looking at is the Cherry Brown. This is a very popular key switch found in many gaming keyboards. This switch has about a 45 gram actuation force and has a very light tactile bump, which makes this switch very good for gaming and typing without deafening anybody else in your house or office building. Our next switch we are looking at is the Cherry Gray. This is also a tactile switch, but this switch is very heavy, but still has the same tactile bump as the gray. So it can sort of feel like a Cherry Black, but with a little bit of distactility stuck in it. This switch is, in my opinion, probably my least favorite out of all of these switches because it's so heavy and the bump just feels out of place. I have not found this on a keyboard, and I've never used it in a keyboard, so I'm not really completely sure how it would feel when typing or gaming. But if you like heavy and tactile, this is the switch for you. Our last Cherry tactile switch is going to be the Cherry MX Clear. This switch is more or less found in older Cherry keyboards, but you can still find keyboards like the Durgod, which you can see on Amazon. It's a TKL 87 key keyboard, which allows you to choose Cherry MX Clears as your switch. These switches are they have about the same weight as the gray, but the bump is a lot stronger, which makes this feel a lot more like a tactile switch instead of just a funky linear one. I would like this if you are somebody who really likes tactile switches that are heavy. This is definitely your best bet because this is basically if you took a Brown, made it a lot heavier, and the bump a lot stiffer, you would end up with a Clear. Before we continue, I just wanted to mention the sound test of all these switches is going to be at the end of the video, so stick around until then so you can watch and listen to what these switches sound like. Our next switch we are looking at is the Cherry MX Red. This is a linear switch, which is slightly heavier than the Cherry MX Brown, and it has no bump. As the name suggests, it is linear, so it just goes all the way down, and then it bottoms out. This is a very good gaming switch, but for typing, I would still recommend something tactile or clicky. This switch is very popular and is found on lots of Corsair. What else have we found it on? SteelSeries, some Logitech, basically any mainstream keyboard, you will find a linear Cherry MX Red switch on. Our next switch is the Cherry MX Speed Silver. This switch is linear, but has a very short travel distance. As you can see, the stem does not go all the way into the housing. It sort of sticks out a little bit when it's, again, I have my phone camera is not on autofocus. I have it set to be right here. But yeah, it doesn't go all the way into the casing. So this makes for a very good gaming switch because it actuates very quickly at the top and it's very fast, but it is slightly heavier than the Reds, but not as heavy as something like a Cherry Gray. Now, my favorite switch, the Cherry Black, is also linear, but it is very heavy, which it just has it's about 67 grams, I believe, of actuation force, and it is a deep switch. When you press it, it's so smooth. This is the smoothest switch I think I've used out of every single linear switch that I've ever had, next to the Otemu Red. The Otemu Red are slightly smoother than the Cherry Red, which I know sounds a little surprising, but yes, it is. This switch is very quiet. When you bottom it out, it is just very quiet. I absolutely love this switch. I definitely would buy a keyboard with Cherry Blacks in them. Now moving on to clicky switches. This switch here is the Cherry MX Blue. This is probably the most popular mechanical switch just ever, next to the red and then the brown. This switch is clicky, which means it has a thing called a click jacket in it, which you cannot avoid making sound. Like, no matter how light I press it, it's still going to click. While a switch like a linear, like this one, it barely makes any sound unless you bottom it out. So you sort of control the sound with any other type of switch but clicky. Clicky are always loud, like this. It's just a very loud switch. So if you want a very defined click when you are playing a game or typing, this is actually a really great typing switch. I type fastest on blues, but if you want to annoy somebody, definitely get the blues. But if you're working in an office building, or if your parents like me just say make your keyboard to shut up, then I highly recommend getting something like a linear or a tactile switch. This switch is relatively light and again is very, very, very tactile. Our next switch is the Cherry Green. This switch is not often found in just a complete keyboard. This switch is often found in a keyboard with blue switches, but has a green switch on the space bar or shift key just for it to be slightly heavier, so it's harder to accidentally press. This click is more pronounced, like not loud, but just more defined and like just solid. Like there's the click. Like this one, it's more rattly because of the lighter spring. This is a much heavier spring. I believe this is 85 grams, so it's a pretty heavy switch. Again, clicky, just like the blue switch. Uses the same click jacket method of making its noise, so very similar to the blues, just a lot heavier. Our final switch we are going to be looking at today is the Cherry MX Milk or White switch. This is my favorite clicky switch of the bunch because it has a very, very quiet click. At one point, I straight up thought this thing was only tactile if you listen closely. As you can tell, the click is very, very, very quiet. So if you still like the strong tactile bump of a clicky switch, but you do not want to deafen everybody around you, I highly, highly recommend you use a Cherry MX White switch. Well guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed just understanding these switches. I will make sure to give you guys the sound test once we are done just with this outro. So stick around for the sound test of every single one of these switches. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.